Hey, Critic Boxers, welcome to Critic Box, where we discuss TV, movies, and just stuff in the industry. Today is a very special episode of Critic versus Critic, where we will be discussing the movie Gladiator 2, The New Batch, where starring Denzel Washington and the ghost of Russell Crowe. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then first of all, why did you click the link of Gladiator 2 review? But second of all, there will be spoilers most likely in this, and we will be having very thorough discussions, but you don't come to see me, and I'm not paid for my opinion, so that's why I'm joined by two freelance film critics. Coming up on my right to your left is Julian Lytle, coming out of us from the hot, muggy DC. How you doing, Julian?
I'm doing okay.
Good. And then to my left or right, we have Joonatan Itkonen coming to us very late in the evening. Thank you for sticking out. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Good. See, that's the first hard-hitting debate we're going to have right now. So both of these critics have very different opinions of Gladiator 2. We have Julian, who says, and I quote, Gladiator 2 is a big, brawny, and sprawling epic film that should make a lot of audiences happy with action and just the right amount of drama and theme. Where on the other side of the debate, we have Joonatan, who believes said plot is a convoluted mess of betrayal, politics, and exposition. None of it is interesting, and very little works if you think about it. So I wanted to begin this debate by bragging that, yes, I went to the movie theater and I saw this movie last night. So I am fresh as a daisy and ready to discuss it. But first off, let's go with Julian. Give me your initial opinion of Gladiator 2, The Secret of the Ooze.
For me, I guess Gladiator 2 works as a big historical epic action movie. It has the right amount of glaze over politics. It's familiar enough. It has good action. And it's something that's really kind of programming compared to what else is out currently. You have family films and basically Broadway musicals. So if you want to see somebody get messed up, you don't want no singing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got Gladiator 2, where there's sharks and rhinoceroses and Denzel Washington playing his character from Training Day that somehow got stuck in ancient Rome.
If that was the pitch for this movie, you got me hooked, okay? You got me interested in it. Now, on the other side of that coin, the other side of the Roman coin, Joonatan, how do you feel about Gladiator 2?
I feel like it's going to be a really interesting debate because, like, I don't disagree with anything Julian says. Like, big, brawny epic is absolutely right. And I think that's my biggest issue is that for something that has all of that and has Denzel in amazing form, there was no need for me to be that bored watching it.
So 2.5 hours is a little bit of a sleeper for you, Joonatan. Is that what you're saying?
A little bit, yeah. Like, we have amazing scenes. We have sharks in the Colosseum. And the whole time I'm just thinking that, like, I'm not entertained at all.
So you said we had rhinos and we had sharks and we had Denzel all running around the Coliseum, and it still wasn't sparking joy for you.
Sparking joy every time Denzel was on screen. I don't think anybody I won't go and ever say that he was bad. He's never bad, but he was particularly good in this. So every time he was on screen, it was great, and every time he wasn't, I was thinking, when can we have him back on the screen?
Okay, so those of you who've seen the movie, obviously Denzel stars as off the top of my head, I forgot his name in the film.
Macrinus.
Doesn't matter. What was it again?
Isn't it like Macrinus?
Yeah, it was like Macrinus. Yeah. Okay, so Denzel stars in that, and he is first of all the guy that purchases Hapo Lucius. What's his name again? Let's go, Lucius. Purchases him as a gladiator and then just uses him as a pawn to further his political career. And I'm not going to lie, I mean, Julian agreed with me, disagreed with me. Denzel felt like the main character of this film. How did you feel about his performance?
Yeah, he is the main. Even he might not be written as the main character, he's the main character. He drives all the action.
Mm-hmm.
He pushes everything in the film. And when you get to the end, he's like, dang, I kind of want him to make it to Gladiator 3, but he's too much. It's just like Training Day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be a 2. This can't be another one for him. So
Yeah.
he takes over the film. It's his movie. If you don't get the Oscar, I don't know. I don't understand. Like, there's no other supporting performance I've seen this year that just grabs you by the face and smacks you in it and say, "This is mine." He punks you. He punks everybody because he's so great.
I mean, I don't think either of us are going to disagree about this one. Like, this was a vehicle for Denzel. Like, I mean, I'm not saying Denzel's back because he was never gone, but this feels like this is the biggest motion picture that he's been in a while, like biggest budget motion picture film, and he delivered. All right, hands down, he delivered. He should be emperor now. So let's just say, I think you could break this movie down into the three parts. For one, we have Gladiator, the gladiatorial aspect of this film, which we can get to that in a second. The second part that is the real backbone of this film is an almost like they're copying a Game of Thrones level intrigue, diplomacy, like moving chess pieces and I'm using different senators on this one. Let's focus on that one because that's where Denzel's vehicle was. That's where he was driving hard. Joonatan, what do you feel about that aspect of this film, this new element of Gladiator 2 that brings in political intrigue and like a weird use of diplomacy and the emperors and everything?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to that if it's Denzel doing it, it's completely worthwhile because he's having so much fun and he understood the assignment perfectly. And I'm really glad that Julian brings up Training Day. I would also bring up that he seems to be channeling a lot of his previous work with Ridley from American Gangster and just doing really amazing work with the way that he is building his empire. He's building up the relationships with everybody, blackmailing here and just nudging other people there. That stuff is great. Like, it's just that there's so much of it on top of all the other stuff. It's like putting a hat on a hat almost, like, because you have the two new emperors who have their own political schemes. Then you have the story of Acacius, who's got his own political schemes. Then you've got Denzel. And I agree, he should be the main character in more ways than he already is. And I just wish that it was more leaner. Because the first one, if you look at it, it's super simple. It's a very simple revenge story that has a little bit of politics in it. And I think that this one gets lost in the woods with that extra level of stuff that they put into it. They could have cut most of it out, and it would have been a stronger film.
Oh, fair point, Julian. How do you feel about that?
See, I think while the actual plot of the political intrigue of Rome, and we must bring it back to what Marcus Aurelius' dream of Rome, and then you have the random twists, all that, yeah, whatever. It's soap opera. It's nighttime, primetime soap. And to me, things are really successful if you can find a way to marry good quality soap with some action. That's when to use Game of Thrones, when it was really cooking, it had the right amount of soap and the right amount of crazy things that happened. Like, oh man, there's a dragon. Like, oh man, that kid got pushed out of a tree. Oh man, this, that, and the third. And you're like, yeah, Littlefinger doing this, that, and the third, whatever. The soapiness, though, like, Jamie loves his sister, but then he's with him with Brienne, so he in love with Brienne or whatever. It's like, yeah, all that machinations is just, to me, that's what made it work, is the soapiness, and then we let Paul Mescal be like sad and mad, but he fight well, and then you got the soap going on over here. Like the soap, he's in a different movie. Like, I know he's in a different movie, but it's okay because he learned how to fight. I give, like, I'm not going to sit here and say this is super amazing Ridley Scott, but on the last 5 years of Ridley Scott, this is workable Ridley Scott. You know what I'm saying?
The best Ridley Scott we've gotten.
Ridley Scott. There's people going to hate other Ridley Scott, and then this is good Ridley Scott for me. But it's the soap. To me, it's all soap, and it doesn't have to make sense. Pedro Pascal is sad. Like, oh, I'm sad, and I don't want to go conquer cities for these dumb twins. And the twins, they don't make no sense, but they look pretty. Like, they look goofy. They look like characters from a Japanese RPG. Like, they're white, super white for no reason. They're like marble. They have bad hair.
Powdered.
Yeah, they have bad hair. There's a monkey for some reason. But, okay, yeah, more Denzel, the original lady from the first movie. Soap. It's just good soap. I like soap, man.
Okay, look, the vibe I got out of those two emperors was I feel like that was like a Logan and Jake Paul. Like that's just two guys where I'm like, who are they? I don't really know who they are, but they have power and money, so I guess I need to put up with them for the time that they're on screen. And this all comes down to, I mean, who's really hot right now? Joseph Quinn, who plays Geta. I guess the bigger of the twin. He seems to be the one in charge, running things, and then you got the wild card, loose cannon, Caracalla, played by Fred Heschinger. Isolating the two emperors here, how do you feel about that one, Juonatan, story-wise? How did you feel? What did you think they brought?
Very little.
Good point. Moving on. No, go ahead.
No, this is again one of those things. Like, I really like Joseph Quinn. I'm a huge fan of his work. I really have enjoyed everything, and I liked him in this because he seemed to be having a lot of fun, just the same way as Denzel. And I really liked his interactions between that. But it felt, as a character, both of them felt like that we need someone who's like Commodus from the first one, but we need to just dial it up to 11. And again, I don't disagree with anything Julian said about it being a soap. And I love me some cheese in these kind of things. Like, whoever's chewing the scenery and having fun, I'm all for it. I just, my biggest gripe with it was that you could probably remove either one of them or even both of them, and you could still have the same basic soap that happens around it. And when I get to that kind of a point in a movie where I'm watching it, where I'm 2.5 hours in, and I'm just thinking that, hang on, I don't need any of this to have all the other stuff, that's usually a bad sign for me in a movie.
I want to say that in the first movie, first Gladiator, it's okay. The Commodus is killed by Maximus, and then I guess there's an uprising and everything, and then now we're 16 years after that, and we're right back to shitty emperors. To me, that was a question I was thinking in my head of like, well, what happened in those 16 years? Did we just like, yeah, let's just go back to psycho emperors, or Julian, how do you feel about that one? Like, was that a plot point that you got or understood, or maybe I was missing it?
Yeah, I'll be yeah. I didn't care. Like, I was like, here's who I knew. I knew Paul Mescal was playing the little boy from the first movie. They would have put all this other storyline right there. I know, and he was sent around the world like Samurai Jack. And he did train. He was in Africa, and he learned how to be a great warrior and all this. And then he comes back and I'm like, no, hold up, nobody know that's your cousin. You just don't know that's your cousin. That he's the actual prince, and y'all was younger than him. All right, who cares? Bet I'm cool with it. Don't even matter. But that was. I'll admit, Jonathan, that is. They were bad. Like, as a story point, they're terrible. But it pays off because we get this good Denzel just making them useless, like, in the end, and it's just so brutal. It's just like, you know what? You hate these characters, don't you? They don't make no sense to be here. Guess what? Denzel agrees with you. So Denzel's going to take care of it.
He's going to use them against each other.
It pays off. It's at a meta way.
I don't disagree. And the fact that we get Denzel having one of the most wonderfully demented scenes in the movie, where he starts championing the monkey Dundas in front of the Senate and just starts telling them that this is what we're going to do and who's with me, and like effectively tells them that I will mess you two up. Like I say, if I can mess up an emperor, I can mess you up. You're right. That is worth it. That's a great scene.
Head pivoting, the way he's like, we need to get behind our new Caracalla and his monkey. And he just looks, and he just moves that head and looks at everybody in the room with that. Everyone's like, you all agree with me? Yeah, that's a good idea to agree with me, right? Yeah, like that was, I love that bit. I love that bit.
They suck. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna sit here and try to put some like frosting over a turnip or something. Like, nah, that's right. As Joseph Quinn is good though. Like, yeah, he didn't get to do enough. They should have just had him just do a fake Joaquin Phoenix for an hour and a half instead of having twins. They should go off. But really made a choice, and it works because Denzel is there.
Look, let's get down to the core of it. The Gladiator. the gladiator fights, the gladiatorial games. In the first one, you see Maximus be broken down. He's a slave. He becomes a gladiator. He starts making his way from like single A bar league gladiator, and then he moves up to triple A gladiator, and then boom, he moves up to the big time Coliseum. Like it's almost like you get to like a sports movie where you're like, just the rough and tumble guy with a dream to make it to the Coliseum, and he makes it. In this film, it's boom, he's captured, he's a slave. Hey, guess what? You're going to be a gladiator. He does one fight, impresses Denzel. Denzel buys him. Next thing you do, he's at a house party with the emperor, and he's fighting there. And then next scene, he's in the Colosseum. That seemed like a streamlined shot to the top of that one. Joonatan, how'd you feel about at least the story of him being a gladiator?
It was basically a repeat of the first movie, so it was fine. Like in this case, I think that I do agree with Julian again, is that the fight, like we're here for the fight scenes, and that's what really matters. And like my biggest issue is that I didn't buy Paul Mescal as a person that everybody kept saying that, oh, I see the rage in you, and you're going to be, you're going to lead people because you're raging. And then he's got a little baby face and he's smiling and just having a lot of charisma and having a lot of, his charm to what he does. But looking at him and looking at Russell Crowe, who was this really like brutal and animalistic character in the first one, I couldn't see it. I just kept going like, him? Really?
Yeah, he didn't. I feel like if there is the rage that you're talking about, Denzel, I feel like he needs to have a little Hulkamania. Like he just gets his ass kicked, and then he just starts getting like angry and starts shaking, and then you see like the violent outburst of rage from that one. But I mean, in the first one, Maximus he was a general, so he was a skilled tactician. In this one, Lucius, what style did you get for him? Did you get the rage from him? Did you get like that he was smart like his daddy, or where'd you pick up on that?
I honestly don't think that he I don't get why he had to be Maximus' son and why they made such a huge deal about it, because it didn't really matter for the story. He could have just been a person who was protecting his home, lost it, and had to go and do all this, and it would have been still as effective. It was fluff on something that didn't need fluff.
Okay, fair point. Julian, what do you think? How did you feel about the fights?
Oh, well, to me, the fights, especially the fight that really impressed me was the fight in the dinner, when they were just, we just gonna parade my soldiers around while y'all are eating, and when he had to wax that old dude up, it was really well choreographed, and it was also shot well. I'm a big thing about fights. I think usually fight scenes directed in like Asian cinema they do it better than Western cinema, because they just put the camera back. And so you can see people fight, the legacy of Bruce Lee and Shaw Brothers is like, you put the camera here and you see everything. None of this cutting back and forth, trying to make you feel like you in the fight. And I thought that one was really well done. And, somehow he can magically take out a rhino. He could take out baboons. He's a pirate captain like Luffy or something. He can, he can shoot the bows and the arrows. He can do whatever it needs to be. So clearly that's why he's the son of Maximus, because he has all the powers and abilities. And I said he traveled around the world like Samurai Jack. He got all the training. In terms of his rage, no, I guess you can see it's like for what you expect of like rage. But I guess for me, it's like sometimes the quiet person, the person that's just sitting there not saying nothing, like in real life, that's the dangerous person. And not the person like, I'm going to do all this. Like, nah, he get whooped. But that person that ain't saying nothing, that you ain't really supposed to be messing with, that is just trying to mind his business. And he just got, his goal is like, yo, I got to kill my man from The Last of Us because he killed my lady. Yeah, that's all he was focused. And while, Paul, you know what? The big thing is like, the last movie was made in a time where we had movie stars. And we don't got movie stars no more. Like, Paul Mescal was great, but he ain't a movie star. Like, he's not. Like, he's not Timothy Chalamet getting all these roles where he could be a movie star. Like,
you're saying this wasn't launching Paul to the top, is what you're saying? Like, this wasn't
his talent in this movie. It's not he didn't get the chance to really go in. So But I still, as a character, it works. Come on, he got the armor. He loaded up the special armor like Link or whatever. He got the special armor on. He got
He did. I mean, Gladius
yeah.
proof. I mean, Denzel was stabbing him. He wasn't getting anywhere with that thing.
You can't get through the Russell Crowe chest plate. You know what I'm saying?
Even 16 years later, that breastplate still works. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It sucked up all the power. You know, they had to scratch his name off the wall because it was too powerful.
See, that was the question that I had. It showed, I guess, like classic fights. I guess not all the fights, because otherwise they'd be chiseling, like 7 different fights after every game, right? But what was it that, like, it was Maximus versus Commodus, but then Maximus was chiseled out.
Yeah, they got to erase him, man. They can't let.
I guess they had to erase him, but then like 2 seconds later, it's like, here, do you want to see this grand vault that we dedicated to him? And he was like, oh, all the good gladiators we buried down here, and it's just this whole mausoleum dedicated to him. Onto there, and it's like, oh, here's all his gear, here's all his sword and everything. Like, Jonathan, did that do anything? Did that scene do anything for you?
No, it's mostly like this is the fun, like the fun of the whole experience, because like I get entirely what Julian's saying. Like it's fun to have all the special armor, have the anime style lead up to the big fight. That stuff in it is fun, but like for me, I think I had been lost by the movie at that point, that I was just starting to go like, hang on, we just ended the first movie on this whole, he was a soldier of Rome, honor him, and this optimistic thing of, it's going to be all right. And then then in this one, we just cut to immediately after that is like, oh no, actually none of it's all right. You have to escape. We're going to go and, remove Maximus from history. It just felt like that. Okay, so we're just going to ignore the entire first movie, but we're also going to have the legacy sequel of remember how good the first movie was, which to me always is, it's my biggest issue with legacy sequels, is that trying to both not say that, we're not doing that, but also remember it because it was really good and we want your money.
Yeah, like, hey, remember this one? Remember this one? I do feel like in this movie, it was... First third of it was, hey, what's this guy's name? Second movie is like second part of the movie is like, oh, his name's Hapo or something or whatever. And I was like, it was Hano. See, I didn't even remember.
Hano, but it's really pronounced it Ano the entire movie. So I'm like,
Ano.
When I saw it written down, I was like, all right, there was no H pronounced in the film, but okay.
Yeah, right. Ano. Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. His name's Ano. But then they're like, oh, by the way, you're Lucius. You're Maximus' son. You know Maximus? You know Maximus Decimus Aurelius? Yeah, you're Maximus. Yeah, you're his son. You're his son. You're Lucius. The whole. And I felt like we got hammered the last third of the movie as a reminder of like, hey, remember your dad was great, and then also for some reason you also know how to fight, and you're a tactician, even though. So we got backstory of Lucius, and it was like. Romans trying to find him when he was a kid, and then they were just like, the adults were like, I don't know, keep running, kid. And then flash forward, he knows how to fight, and he's a brilliant tactician. I feel like that was like the flashbacks we got were useless, but then like the flashbacks we needed were there.
Well, they showed him be the tactician and stuff in the beginning of the movie when he in Africa. So to me, it was just like, oh yeah, the white boy, he with the Africans, he with the black folks. You know what I'm saying? He learned how to squabble. He learned everything he needs to know. But hey, Pedro Pascal is he's just too beastly. So he just came through. And the reveal of him being the son, yeah, that was cheesy, because you watch the first movie and you think maybe him and her might have had a thing, but her having a whole kid while he was married,
I was sitting in the theater, and she was like, and what was it? Lucilla was like, yeah, I banged Maximus. At no point, I've seen Gladiator numerous times, and no point did I pick up on that at all. That like Lucius was his kid. Like
they did. Yeah, it's like he died. He didn't even know that. It was just like, because the only thing he talked about is like, my wife and son are dead. I want to go to the afterlife to be with my wife and son.
Yeah.
Maybe if he knew that Lucius was his son, maybe he was like, oh, I don't have to die. That would be a big reveal. But then
also like, oh, by the way, I've been banging Lucilla on the sly. But my main wife and kid, those are the ones that I really care about. I can't wait for them in the afterlife. Like that, I feel like that was an element where I was just like, was that even? So if we're gonna have criticism and critiques about this, we can wrap up this episode real quick about it, because we could be here all night. If we're gonna have critiques of a movie, then we need to have ideas for improvement. I got my own. But if there's something you would be able to improve upon, Jonathan, what do you think you would do? What would something you would say, like, what aspect of this movie would you change or take out to have made this like even better?
Well, I was thinking what Julian just said about that there's no movie stars. I would argue that Pedro Pascal has the capacity to be one and to be like a classic one. I think should have been the main character. He had the most interesting arc as the soldier who's forced to go and do this stuff, who really hates it, who has to come back and put on a brave face and be like, yes, this is all great. I enjoy this. And while, having nothing but contempt for the system that he's in, and that him and Denzel would have had a remarkable chemistry together. And I think that would have been a much more interesting movie of those two going at it around, like surrounded by this whole gladiatorial combat.
Okay, good angle on that one. Julian, what do you think?
I actually would have took out the entire. You could split this into two movies, where you still have the Ano and he's really Lucius and somehow he gets it back and Macron is trying to use him. But I would take that whole like Lucilla and Pedro Pascal's character trying to bring back the Senate and her father's dream or whatever. I'll put that in a whole nother movie. I would just had, it would have been Macronus, the annoying twins. Maybe I would have got rid of a twin. It'd have been
Just
human.
one of them.
It'd have been
The short
human,
one. The short one. We get rid of him.
Yeah, it'd be Human Torch, Pedro Pascal, Macronis, and Paul Mescal, and that would be the dynamic. And then maybe you save the whole Pedro Pascal getting killed or something later to a whole nother movie. And yeah, I would have split it into like Twilight or Harry Potter or something. It'd have been two movies.
See, the way I would
get everything out.
Like the way I was watching it was, and I agree with Jonathan on a number of points of, I feel like some scenes didn't breathe enough. I mean, we're 2.5 hours, and I felt like a lot of scenes were short and sharp. If we could have made, two movies maybe, or 3-4 part miniseries would have been able to stretch out some of these things, let some things breathe. But here's my quick hot take on this movie, and it's 3 words in 3 categories: more, less. More gladiatorial fights. I feel like for a gladiator movie, the ones we got, yes, wonderful, cool. Fighting baboons, naval battles, fighting rhinos, that's nice. But in the same way that Ridley Scott does of Alien versus Aliens, the 2 different movies, we had one alien and then we had a fuckload of aliens. What we could have done is Gladiator and Gladiators. And we could have had a lot more gladiators doing a lot more fighting. And here's how we would have done it. We would have had it where it was more of a gladiator uprising, like pretty much a Spartacus. Like we could have had a Spartacus type movie where it's like that's where they were doing it, and it was fueled with Pedro Pascal fueling that with his and that's the second more if we're doing some political intrigue, like some espionage, let's do a little bit more of that. I like that was leaning on it because there's it was a little bit of an element in Gladiator, but in Gladiators we get more of that, and Pedro Pascal helps Paul Mescal with an uprising in to get out of the chains, to get out of the Colosseum, to turn on everybody. And then that's when you get the political upheaval of Denzel gets the power of the armies, but Pedro Pascal and Paul Mescal team up and they got the gladiators and they start taking over and everything. And then the third part, the less, we could have done without any of the relation to Maximus. This could have been, instead of 16 years later, we could have said this was 30 years later or 50 years later or whatever. And we're like, okay, cool. So then there was an uprising. We had some good emperors and then we went back to shit emperors. But we needed more time to do that. We needed a couple more decades. And then we're back to 2 shit, Logan and Jake Paul level emperors. We're back to the shit emperors and we need an uprising again. I feel like that could have been the element of that. We didn't need any of this Maximus shit. Like we could have let him rest in peace. And we could have just moved on and said, hey, here's another Gladiator's tale. Because, I mean, obviously Ridley Scott don't give a shit about historical accuracy, but there were gladiator uprisings in the Roman history. Okay, that was factual. Spartacus was just the most famous one, but there were other ones, and this could have just been one of those. So it could have been gladiators, and you have a fuck ton more gladiators doing a fuck ton more fights and a lot more different battles. It just wasn't in the arena. It spilled out into the streets. It started going into, started going into the army. That's how I would have done this movie. And Ridley Scott, it's not too late. You can call me for Gladiator 3. All right, I still have time for that one. But how would you feel about that one? Like, was that a new direction we could have gone in, Jonathan?
Well, I mean, looking at Ridley Scott's past couple of films, he's released the director's cut for each one of them. I wouldn't be surprised if we've got like another longer version of this coming out, because there's apparently a lot of material that they just left out, and knowing him how he shoots, 100 hours of footage on per project. So yeah, sure, I would have watched that. I would have watched basically anything with that, because I would like to establish that I still enjoy all of this. I still enjoy a lot of this. I just wish I hadn't been, as displeased with what I saw.
Okay, fair enough. Julian.
Hey, your version sounds good too. I could watch it. Gladiators fighting, they running through. Yeah, that could work. Mm-hmm. I agree, because out of nowhere, when you get Paul Mescal's character, he's out of nowhere. He's like, I fought under your father. I loved him. I was like, okay, you saved that. You saved that. That means you knew he was the son the whole time. You didn't say that when he was in jail.
Right.
Like,
never came up.
Like, my bad. I didn't mean to kill your wife, bro, but these terrible twins got me out here taking conquering city states that I don't want to, but
we go do.
Yeah, there's a lot they could have done with Pedro Pascal, but hey, he got to check. He can pay his mortgage again. It's all good,
right? All right, you know what? Before we wrap up, there's one thing I want to notice, and I haven't seen this in a movie in a while, and I want to know if you guys noticed this one. Is blue filter for night. That is an old director's trick of doing night shots. And I don't know if you guys noticed that, but every time it was night or dark, whatever, it suddenly got very blue. That was the classic. That's an old school director's way of doing night shots. Is like, it's pretty much day, they're light for day, but then they put a blue filter on it, it looks like night. And I love that little element that Ridley Scott put in there. That's something I noticed as a good eye. And obviously, I think we all could agree one of the best characters unsung was Matt Lucas, who was the master of ceremonies at the Coliseum. The albino guy in front of the trumpets, and he would just do the announcement or whatever. I want to give a special shout out to him. But okay, so last notes, last tidbits you want to drop in there. Julian, how do you anything else you want to say about Gladiator 2?
I just think people should go see it in the movie theater, especially if you don't want to see witches, Wizard of Oz singing, and you don't want to watch Moana 2. And you don't, I don't know, Crave the Hunter could be good, but yeah, like,
we'll see about Crave the Hunter.
Yeah,
we'll have discussions on it.
If you want to see people get beheaded and messed up and beat up, then go see some Gladiator 2, man. That's what you got.
2.5 hours of good time. All right, Joonatan, what do you think?
I'd say go see Gladiator 2 anyway, because I do agree that we don't have enough of this stuff, and we don't have enough historical action drama on the big screen. And really, it's if you go to see a movie and you want to see something that's big and big scale, then yeah, where else are you going to see a Colosseum naval battle?
Right. With sharks. Okay, then. I feel like we can wrap up on Gladiator 2. I am joined by Julian Lytle and Joonatan Itkonen. They are freelance film critics, and I nailed both of their names. You can catch them and their wonderful opinions on everything else as soon as it comes out. And I think we can all agree that Gladiator 2 needed more chest bursters. My name's Jared. Thank you for coming in here on Critic Box. We'll see you next time.